Good evening, everybody. This is the Finance Committee. It is Thursday, March 12th, 2026. I have exactly, well, I'll say 4:01. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. We have a quorum. We do have 3 members Zooming, Paul, Roy, and Kate. Is there any public comment on any issue that's not on the agenda? Is there anybody from the committee that would like to make a comment? Item number 3 on the agenda is the review and vote on the minutes of March 5th, 2026.
And Mary, I did update the minutes. I sent them out just about 20 minutes ago, but
Oh.
all the edits that I received, one from Steve and a couple from yourself, have been made to the final set. So
Okay. So we don't,
nothing of substance, though. They're just adding people that were remote participation
Jerry
and adding
Steve
Jerry.
was
So
remote.
same as sent out earlier with just a couple.
Okay, okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended, since what we've seen has been amended?
I'll make a motion for approval.
That's Roy.
Yes.
Do I have a second to approve the minutes as amended?
Second.
No, Patty? All in favor of the minutes? Steve, Ron, you were absent. 1, 2, 3, Paul, Roy, and Kate. Patty, myself, and me. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 0.
801, Mary. Right.
801.
Oh, 1. As amended. Thank you. On to the agenda. We're on item number 4, budget update, and I'll turn it over to Rich for the latest update on the budget.
We've been honing in on finalizing the town's budget. I've sent out a couple times that I call the budget information points packet of information, which kind of spells out the various impacts of the budget. But I do have an update which would potentially make this better, but there seems to be some confusion with the school district on how to calculate and their assessment based on different enrollments. So let's not count our chickens before they hatch, but I still think that what is in this information packet is kind of the worst case scenario for us. But the information I have now, which I received an update from the school, which wasn't correct, but I figured out the error and made the corrections, but they're still assessing whether this is going to be the final product. So just to reiterate what's in this packet and which still stands is the town base budget is up 1.9%, which adds $109 to the tax levy. We are short, as it turns out, $755,000 because of the transfer station, pension, and health insurance, which turns out to be another 1.9%, another $109. We have settled and valued all our contracts. It costs $1.1 million in this upcoming year's budget, which is 2.8% increase, and adds $159 to property tax. And then the final thing that we're waiting for, but the latest information I received is we would need an override of about $660,000 for schools, which would add $95. So the total of all of that is $472 increase, which is just about 8%. Correct. Well, if this is the worst case, so 10.8, 627, 10.8%. Mary Paul has a question.
Well, I think Rich, you may have answered it. So in the thing you sent out, when I added everything up, it was 10.8. So with the potential good news, it brings it down to 8.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
And that would be a total override of just under $3 million.
And the original one was a little 3.9.
Correct.
So we've gone from 3.9 to little over 3. And I have a question about the enrollment, and I understand there's some disagreement, confusion, concern, whatever you want to call it, on the numbers that we have never, to my knowledge, used before. We've always used the October 1 numbers.
And I think that's what it says in the agreement, so I don't know how you get around that. But,
Yeah, I don't understand either.
you know, and then it's been a while since I've had to be involved in school finance stuff, but you know, I think there's probably some issues with using, they call foundation enrollment, because I think that includes kids that might be chartered and choiced, as opposed to the number of kids actually in the seats at the actual school that you're being assessed for. So, I guess we'll see how this plays out.
So how is
They
it?
are scheduled
I was gonna say, how's the
still.
decision?
I did confirm they are coming next Thursday
Mhm.
for their budget presentation,
Discussion.
and they're voting their budget next Wednesday, the 18th. So
Mhm.
one way or the other has to come to a head.
Who originally pushed for the date that's not October 1st?
I don't know the details of it. I'll probably let them explain it, but you know, there is some rationale for it, but usually the changes are, you know, you do know October 1 numbers, but then there's a quality review at DESE and there's amendments, but usually those amendments are ones or twos plus or minus, not 34.
Right, right.
Um,
So to answer your question, the interim finance director,
Peter, turn on your mic.
oh, sorry, the interim finance director is,
Is it on? No.
there we go. Interim finance director at the region, you know, has had that position at other
School.
institutions. And so he just used that January number because that's what he's done before.
Mm.
So they got to resolve the thing with the agreement, but also I think there's a question about the October 1 number. So they got to resolve all that.
And this actually has been an issue in other districts. Upper Cape Tech has had an issue between Bourne and Wareham.
Mm.
And so I might actually ask to see their listing of children. You know, they give us the names and addresses, which we're allowed to do. I used to do it as a consultant and auditor for different towns back in the day. It's not something that is normally done, but we're allowed to, just to validate that, you know, we're being assessed for children that actually live in our town.
Mm.
I mean, it could go you could go badly for
Yeah,
us too. It
yes,
could go the other
yes,
way, you know,
yeah.
but I don't know how much due diligence is really spent on validating addresses of which, you know, and when you're talking a lot of money between towns, something.
But interestingly, I think you're right that the total enrollment includes children from Eastham that go to, that's choice out to other schools
Mhm.
and that go to charter schools,
Mhm.
but not to the tech, because the tech has its own budget.
That's been separate.
Right.
So why would you pay an assessment to your school for kids that aren't even going to that school?
Mhm.
So
Well, we get into the whole
I
thing
don't
about
want to talk myself out of a good
the
fortune, but
whole thing about the fairness of the using the
enrollments in general.
enrollment
Yeah.
for assessments. So.
So I just want to reiterate, so you're saying that based on today, we've gone from 3.9 to 3, little over 3 million for an overlay.
Under 3.
And what does that equate to in dollars for a median valued home?
Those are the numbers I gave you. So the current numbers I have from the school would total, including the school, including everything,
$627.
$472 on the current numbers, which is the 8%. If we go with the old numbers, it's the 672, the 10 plus. So all those dollar amounts I gave you were increased values on the median valued home. Mary Roy has a question.
Yeah, Roy?
Yeah, Rich, do you recall, it's 472 this year increase for the average home. Do you recall what it was last year?
I don't off the top of my head. I think it was right around 3%. I remember the percentage. I don't remember the dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the 3.9 number? I get 1,575 for the collector's item, 650 for the education, 755 for the operating. I got the wrong number then?
Yeah,
In here,
the 1,575,000 is the 3-year, but that's not all being raised in year one. Only one. Okay.
So I had the 1.6 for the schools, 1.575 for the salaries, the 3-year salaries, and the 755 for the pensions, health insurance. And that came to originally 3.930. What numbers do you have, Fred?
I only have 650 on the education.
That's the new number,
I-
right? That you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
came out with tonight.
But
Put
not
six.
1.6. You said 1.6 just now.
The old number, yeah.
Yeah. 1.6 for schools was the old number.
Okay.
And the new number is now 660.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that include elementary, East Town
Yes.
Elementary estimate?
So, my suggestion is, not to rack your brains too much. This has to get settled and resolved, and it's just another reason of why I always remember just wait till I get the actual official certified vote and budgets, because we can just be going back and forth all week on this.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Okay.
Does it sound right that last year the average was up $195, the average tax, like with this schedule?
That's the schedule there, yeah. So if that's what
Yeah,
it does,
there's
that's
195 for the average and median is 169, so about 100.
so 169 on the median last year, and it should have the percentage there, Patty.
3% on both,
Yeah, so
301.
3%.
So what went from 169 to 472 at the moment? Is what we're talking about.
Well, the increase last year was 169, 3%, and right now for this year, the increase is 470,
Median valued home.
about 8%,
Mhm.
which fits in to our plan here, right? Because we talk about having a strategic plan where every 3rd year we're seeking an override that's going to carry us through the 3 years. And if, basically what I've been telling you, our revenues grow at 3% a year. So years 2 and 3, our increases are probably going to be right around 3%. In that 3rd year, they're going to be higher.
Do we ask about the collective bargaining now?
And $1.5 million for marketing.
Covering the 3 years,
That's $1 now.
correct?
$1 this year.
You're saying the additional amount, if we're talking about 1.6 total, and we're only using 1.1 in the first year, the difference between the 1.6 and the 1.1 will,
No.
This year.
Mhm.
$3 million. 1.6.
No. The 1.575. I take into account that the 1.1 million starts in year 1, and I add 3% to that because that's going to grow 3%. And I'm just taking in year 2 the difference between the 1.1 plus 3% versus what the total salaries are for year 2. So somebody put it in. So if we're asking for 1.1 right now,
Yep.
next year, because that grows by up to 3%, that becomes 1,133,000. But, and I don't know, this isn't the exact number, but just for talking points here, year 2 salaries total, because they're going up faster than 3%, is something of the magnitude of about 1.39, let's say. So that means I would need $257,000 more money in year 2, in addition to the 1.1. So add the 257 to the 1.1, that's 1 million.
That's true. The $1
$357.
million is reoccurring every year.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
And then the 3rd year is the other, 250 or whatever.
Jump to 1.5. Okay.
So we're getting the override to cover the 3 years, but we're only using it when we actually need it.
Yep.
So when you look at that sheet that Patty was just referring to, that I showed the tax levy calculation, and you look back a couple years, you'll see that we had some excess levy capacity. It's not because we truly had excess. It's because we raised the 3-year contract. Look, 2 years ago, Patty, what was the excess levy capacity on the worksheet?
Was it 244?
That sounds right, about $244,000. And then the next year, what was the excess levy?
21.
121.
And then 3 the next year. So we're going to use it up.
So it's only excess levy capacity because we have the capacity with the override to cover the 3 years of collective bargaining, not because we've got extra money otherwise sitting around.
I wondered the same thing.
And so the same thing would happen here. The difference between 1,575,000 and the 1,000,001, so $475,000 would be the excess levy capacity for this fiscal year. And then next year, you're going to see that drop to a couple 100,000, and then the third year will be zero.
So I just have a question again on the enrollment. Who benefits with using the January versus the October?
We do.
We do.
Eastern.
And only us.
But who does not benefit?
All 3 other
Everybody else? It's
Yeah,
not
but-
just one town.
went from Eastham being the only increase in the original numbers to Eastham being the only decrease.
Okay, so all the other 3 towns would be impacted.
I don't think Wellfleet was much, right?
No,
I think it was
no.
Brewster and Orleans. Brewster and Orleans were the most.
Okay.
But, like I said, there is a resolution to this and they need to work through their process and then present it to us. So I wouldn't worry too much, Mary, because we could go roundabout on this.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure I understand who benefits and who doesn't, as to how people decide whether they like it or not.
Well, I think, like I said, I think there is an answer to this. And so the answer is the answer, whether we like it or not.
But we don't know the answer yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter who benefits and
Right.
whether we should like it or not. I mean, the answer is what it's going to be. Now we could work on changing what the answer should be in the future, but
Hmm. Of course, the other thing that is in the agreement is the 3-year rolling average.
not in the agreement.
I know, I'm just saying that's part of what's being discussed.
Yeah.
So that would be in another interesting discussion. Okay.
So Mayor, I'm just going to roll right into the warrant then, if you
Mhm.
don't mind. I know
Can I
Paul's
ask one
here.
question on the,
Roy?
yes, on the collective bargaining, what was the percent increase in the pension for the employees?
The pension isn't a collective bargaining item, but this gets a little difficult to answer that directly, so I'll have to explain it a little indirectly, I guess. But what we did, and it's a good question, so that people should hear this. And I did change the summary a little bit to reflect kind of simply where we target and aim to be. So what we have to do, because the employment market is so, it's all in the employees' court at this point. They've got a lot of options, and what we do is look at contracts all over the Cape, and then pay particular focus to the pay scales and benefits in our neighboring towns on the Lower Cape. And in all cases, really, as of the FY26, this current fiscal year, we're in pay scales, we were behind most. We were I'd say, maybe not all, but generally, I'd say in the bottom third of pay scales. And probably at the bottom for public safety, police, and fire, with maybe some exception. So based on that, we got to go through and first we kind of bargain what should the cost of living adjustments, the traditional COLAs be, a 2%, a 3%, a 4%. But that's not going to cover getting to where we want to be, which is our target is typically to be in the top third of pay scales and our peers for year one. One of the things that we've bargained with our employee groups, and they've been accepting and understanding of it, is we have relatively low, what we call step increases year to year compared to other towns. So we know that we got to have in year one, need to be competitive and kind of in the top third. But year two and year three happen, since our rate of increase is slower, we'll lose some ground. And not all contracts of all towns are in the same cycle as us. So for example, Orleans will be negotiating a contract in 28. And so there'll be a new level set for everybody else to compare themselves against that comes after them. So with those things happening, and Chatham is after this year. So when those things happen, the new level gets set and everybody that comes after those agreements are settled has got to kind of benchmark themselves against that. So every third year, we have a market adjustment and we bargain that. So in addition to a cost of living adjustment, we've got a market adjustment. And that's really depends upon the union. Police and fire had pretty big market adjustments, but we kept the cost of living adjustments low, as well as the low step increases. Police and fire are the big ones. And for our administrative union, our Eastham Employees Association, which we benchmark against our non-union with our non-union employees, had a COLA, and I want to say that was 4%, 3.5%, and 3% for the 3 years. But the 4.5% was more than just a COLA. They had other items that they wanted to bargain that we agreed that we won't, but we bought them out, so to speak. So instead of a 3.5% COLA, 3.5% COLA, and a 3% COLA for the 3 years, we gave them an extra point to kind of buy out or bargain out the other items that were on the table. In addition, there's 10 grades in our pay plan. And some of those grades some of those positions on the higher end of the grades were significantly underpaid to our peers. But some of the people on the lower end of the grades were paid equivalent or maybe a slightly more. So wasn't appropriate to give everybody a market adjustment. So what we did is we changed the differential between one of the grades, a mid-level grade to a higher grade from 5% to 10%. So some employees got a 5% additional market adjustment in addition to that COLA. That happens just once in the first year. So that's kind of the flow of it. There's a lot more to it. The long and the short of it is, generally speaking, it's not equivalent for every single union because they're all different and compare different to different towns. But generally speaking, our employees are now with this contract for the next fiscal year that we're voting this overhead, and approximately the top third of pay. And in year 2 and year 3, they'll bring down to be right in the middle of the pack, is my anticipation. And then that's time to bargain again. And we need to go up as much as we did this time because we're a little further ahead. Like I said, where we started this year, we're at kind of the bottom of the pack. And hopefully where we end up at the end of 3 years next time is the middle of the pack. We won't have to make as much of a jump.
What towns do you include in your analysis? I think in the summary, it mentioned the outer Cape towns, and then it also said the lower Cape towns.
All the lower Cape, Chatham, Harwich, all the way to Provincetown. I look at all of the Cape because that's relevant too, especially when we have a lot of people have to live in the mid to upper Cape. Might be easier to just take a job there. They're all hiring.
Where you live.
And, those weren't favorable comps to us. They're paying, especially in fire departments in Barnstable, for instance, are not a town department. They have 5 independent fire districts that aren't subject to Prop 2.5, and their district meetings, just like our town meetings, have about 35 people that show up. And you can probably imagine who those 35 people are. And they get 95% health insurance and really good pay.
So you take Barnstable and do it.
We got to account for everybody. Yeah. But our peer comps are the lower Cape.
And lower Cape being Harwich up to Provincetown.
Yep.
Any other questions on the issue we're discussing?
Mayor, I just want to update you on the warrant before Paul comes and talks about zoning.
Yeah, do you have some new?
And I do have some printed, if anyone would like a printed copy.
Yeah. Does everybody want, the warrant has been redone?
Get more.
Is it the same as what you sent?
Same as what I sent, yeah.
Oh,
I have it on my iPad if someone else needs
Yeah,
a
I'm
copy.
No,
And I'll bring it up on the screen just in case anybody.
Anybody? No.
Oops.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna go to the table of contents. Well, actually, no, let me start here on the warrant, town meeting warrant and election warrant. This question 1. This is on. And not number those pages. Oh, it's not, these pages isn't numbered. It's
No, the pages aren't numbered, so,
they are
Yeah.
after this, but the first page in after the
yeah,
code.
yeah.
Question 1 is the general override. I have to update it for the 660, but so 2,990,000, that will say.
2,990,000.
And you'll see new from last draft is we have questions 2, 3, 4, and 5. So these aren't set in stone, and I'll bring this up as a topic and a decision point for the budget hearing with yourself and the select board. But in talking, we thought this was the best way to get it on the table is to show it what it looks like. And if we end up wanting to take these out based on the budget hearing discussion, we can do that. But this is a new Article 2D that I added to the article list. And these are the overrides associated with 2D. So we're going to propose the priority list of items in 2D. If the town wants to add these additional services, they'll have the opportunity to vote on them, contingent on passing an override for each of them individually. So you go to the table of contents, you see there's 2D is there when it wasn't there before. Also is a new 4E. And this is may or may not be needed. I'm hoping that we don't need it. But if our current schedule holds with our wastewater treatment bidding, we will get the results of those bids on April 30th. And in the event that it comes in more than 170, we have some things we can do if we need to bring it under 170. But we still have a drop dead deadline with SRF to get all this done and signed a contract by June 30th. So I thought it important to put a protective thing in here to authorize additional borrowing. It doesn't have an amount in it because I don't know what that amount is. If the amount isn't needed, we'll just pass over the article and not even consider it. But if we do, if the bids come in and it's 175 million and we can't figure out a way to get that down under 170, then my recommendation is the cost of that extra 5 million is to bring that to town meeting, see if we can get it, is much more valuable than losing 0% financing through SRF. So this would enable us to, at the last minute, put in an additional request so we can meet our SRF deadline.
Yeah, but before we do this, we need to make sure that we've cut as much as we can and
Right.
take a hard look at some of these alt-add numbers.
Right. So we'll get bids, and then if they come in over 170, to Fred's point, the next step is capital project committee. We'll meet and we'll go through what are these elements do we not have to do in this?
Yeah. I just don't want to go to town meeting and just ask for more money
Right.
without us doing our due diligence.
Well, that's why there's no amount.
No, I know that.
And because I don't have an amount, I can't make a ballot question at this election because you need to know the amount. So it's not debt excluded, but at least we have the authorization and we can move forward. And at the next election, we can ask for the debt exclusion is kind of the plan, if we have to do it at all.
So you're just asking for permission to put this fund together. The amount would be something in next year's warrant. Is that
No.
what you're saying?
No, when the amount in this, there's no amount in this warrant article as written.
I realize that, yeah,
But we will know that amount,
Yes.
if any,
right.
at town meeting time. So when we read the motion, we'll say
Oh,
exactly the
You're
amount.
expecting to know that amount.
April 30th, you said April 30th, you
Yeah.
would know it by?
Okay,
And if we don't need any extra.
We won't ask for it.
This will go away.
Right.
okay.
Are there places you can take costs out?
Yeah.
If need be?
But we I don't know if we have some alternative things that we can either put in or take out. Right now they're in, but we could decide to take them out. But it would be after the bidding.
I just, it's a protective thing. I think we're going to come in less. And even and if we don't, we can take things out, which hopefully will bring us less. but I don't want to take the chance of losing
We lose
0% SRF. So
We've got to have financing lined up to get the
Mhm.
0% and the,
yes,
Yeah, okay.
so.
So if we came in at like 172 and we didn't
Yeah.
authorize 2 million, we lose SRF.
Basically, yeah.
If
Which
the
we don't
bids-
want to lose.
Right.
But I hate going back to town.
Next year. Yeah.
We could just put our cots up at the school.
Just about that timeline, I think you said, Rich, the bids are due April 30th. Then there would be the process you're describing with capital projects, but the town meeting is May 4th?
May 4th.
That's.
it's tight. We'll have to post a meeting notice.
But Ron, we know the numbers, so I think we could react quickly if we had to.
Other changes,
Can I ask a question on the utilities, like the oil and the gas? Those are all locked in, those rates for 3 years, those public works ones, right? Like,
no, I think our contract expires this year. So we have a new negotiated rate. We use Cape Light Compact is our aggregator for the Cape, and they do an RFP process, and we get energy supplier bids, and we evaluate them as to the rate and the quality of the proposal. 'Cause sometimes, you might have a good proposal, but you can't add any new accounts, lots of little things like that. And then usually the term is a big deal, depending on what's going on in the world. You might want a longer term or a lot shorter term, or depending on, if you got a great rate and they're offering a longer term, you snap that up like we did a few years ago. A few years ago, I think we got a 4-year term, and it was very valuable to us. This time, we're on a 2-year contract. So that's both natural gas and electric supply. I'm anticipating those to go up,
to go up, that's why I asked.
probably more than 3%,
More bad news.
which is why we carry a little bit of surplus in those accounts. Other articles I just want to update you on. On 4D, adopt water resources enterprise fund. I kind of lose track of all the things we've talked about, but I want to make sure you understand this. I want to consolidate our enterprise, our water enterprise and our wastewater enterprise into a water resources that allows us to, it's better for budgeting because the same staff and the same assets are going to be working for the same thing. And I don't want to have to split it out and have indirect charges back and forth. And it allows us, we don't commingle funds as for the setting of rates. You still do that independently, but the retained earnings can be used to support each other. So it's just a much better way to go. So the curious thing about this is the rules of the Department of Revenue. And I had to get creative on how to address that. But I spoke with them and they're in a full agreement that what I want to do makes a lot of sense. Is I'm going to budget, instead of using water revenues to fund the water enterprise this year, you'll see that the water enterprise is funded solely by its own retained earnings. So what that effect is that the water enterprise will use up all its retained earnings, and all the water receipts from July 1 for this upcoming fiscal year will go to the water resources, which is to seed it for its balance of retained earnings. So we'll use up the retained earnings in the water enterprise, and then we'll be able to deauthorize it the next year, and we'll have retained earnings in the water resources fund. So it's a little cutesy way that, otherwise they don't, you would think they could just transfer surplus from one fund to another fund, but they don't let you do that. So the alternative was, it would have to all go back to the general fund. You'd have to wait a whole year. It would have to become free cash, and then you'd have to take that free cash and put it into the new fund. And nobody wants to do that. So my little methodology here bypasses all that, but we end up in the same spot. So that's kind of the key thing I just wanted you to know there. 5A has been updated. I need to talk to Amy Ekman specifically because she's a big proponent of this, and the select board, obviously. But I looked at it. It does have a cost to us. That's the adoption of the HERO Act. We can double our veterans exemptions and add a rider to increase those exemptions by inflation, CPI each year. Doubling is expensive for us. It's to be a little over $80,000, but a 50% increase is palatable. We can absorb that within our existing overlay. And so that's what I'm going to suggest, as well as the CPI increase.
How many veterans Are involved in it.
I have it in the summary here.
The summary,
Oh, it is.
5A.
59?
That
Right.
sounds right. Yep. Right. So right now the total exemptions are 83,000. Going up 50% would go up 41.5 to a total exemptions that we issue to veterans of 120, just about 125,000, and that's 59 veterans. And then the annual increase would be around 4,000 bucks a year at 3%. So we would have to build that annual increase in the CPI into our budgets going forward. I mean, we could wither that for a few years, but eventually that $4,000 a year every year starts to add up and erode on the amount of our overlay account. So there's a financial impact to this, but
So the article is for 50%.
Right.
But the law allows for up to 100%.
town meeting can determine whatever percent they want up to 100%.
And so
So we could come back and revisit this
we
and
could
and
revisit
increase
and you
again.
could increase it. Okay. Now, I was wondering about those two different percentages.
5B and C are just to become consistent with state law, but town council, I should say town council has reviewed all of this, and I'm going to touch base with them tomorrow to finalize it. They probably have some amendments on 5B and C, so it's not, think about those too much yet until we see the actual language. Then 5D is simply to, we have a property owner, we've been trying to get electrical services on Thoreau Drive repaired. It's a privately owned electrical service. We're not paying for it, but we're trying to assist the property owners. But there's one property owner that's non-responsive to Eversource's need for a easement. And so we're just gonna take the easement and turn it over to Eversource so that they can move forward with their work. 6A is a special legislation for the resident to have the residential tax exemption apply to people, not just residents whose primary home is Eastham, but also people who rent to those whose primary residence is Eastham. And so,
How many properties, do you know how many properties are being used as year round?
yeah,
Because 150 and
Summary says
One,
150.
150?
so it's in the summary. So that's why I added to some of these summaries. There's about 150 year-round rental properties on our registry. So on the current 3% RTE, that's about $150 of value to that property owner. And if the RTE were to increase, I rounded down a little bit because we're adding some more participants now with this. So it used to be 52. Now I'm just calling it $50. For every 1% the RTE goes up, it's about $50 of value to these renters, landlords, I should say, and our residents as well.
So then would this happen automatically if we voted at town meeting, or then does it have to go through the state
This would still have to be approved as
at the state
a
level?
special legislation, so a couple years out.
It'd be a benefit to the landlord, but a corresponding liability to the non-resident taxpayers.
Correct. I think that value was, if I recall correctly, it's in my RAM variety, I think
different,
about
yeah.
$20. So a benefit of $50 is it comes at a detriment of $20.
It's really not gonna change minds, I would think, $150, whether people would convert it from
Well, at 3%, if the RT is something different, then it
something
becomes,
different, a different story, yes.
Might keep someone that's a year-round rental from
Mhm.
turning it to short-term.
6B is a special legislation that kind of a petition, but not a petition. The select board agreed to add it as one of their articles. So this is to prohibit application of fertilizer. I sent you out the link to the meeting video that I condensed down.
Thank you very much for sending that.
And then finally, 7 is a condensed version of our CPA requests. 7A is the reservations, and 7B is one consolidated article for the projects. Again, anybody can hold out any particular item if they don't like it and talk about it separately. They can be voted one vote, one motion for the whole table, or multiple motions for each of the lines. So it does make it easier to see what we're all looking at.
I did notice that in the earlier warrant, there were some information that was incorrect on a couple of those items. So I haven't looked to see, since I didn't have this, to know whether it's been
Well, if you send it to me, Mary, I'll check it. And
corrected.
so one more thing before I ask Paul to come up. I just might want to ask, just in be expediencies, would you be inclined to want to make a motion and a vote on Article 1, Article 3A and 3B, and Article 7A and 7B? They seem to be relatively non-controversial, and we could get them out of the way. So 1 being revolving funds, 3A and B being the capital plan and capital budget, and 7A and B being the CPA funds.
Can I ask just a question on one?
Sure.
You know how it says a revolving fund for recreation bottles and cans?
Oh, yeah,
Get rid of that program?
Yes,
did.
we did.
But
Yeah,
I
they,
think,
Still gonna keep it open.
I think
'cause
I'd keep it open.
it's a-
There'll just
'cause
be
it
no
could
money.
Come back. It's like you
Right.
said, it's easier to keep it rather than take it away and try to add it back.
That's a good point, yeah.
Okay.
About that.
I saw that too, because you you have to throw them in the regular trash.
So what was I'm sorry, 3A?
So I was wondering if you'd be inclined to want to vote on 1, 3A, and 3B.
I had a question on 3A, I think. That's the capital.
Mhm. We
Right
had
here. So-
talked about this in several months, that's why I thought maybe we were okay with it, but
Yeah. The table for the total for FY 27 is different from the article for capital for FY 27. Does that matter or?
it's different because the plan includes all items, including items that are anticipated to be funded by grants. So if
Okay.
it's a grant, it's not included in 3B because we don't have to appropriate the grant.
Okay, that explains that. And what was the other one was the CPA?
Yeah, 8, I think it's
Yeah.
8.
No, I changed it. That's the other thing. I changed, put CPA before zoning so we could just get our business done and then have a great discussion on zoning at the end of the meeting.
Lucky you.
So you want to vote on 1, 3A, 3B, and what were the other ones?
7A and 7B.
7A and 7B is CPA.
Yeah. Let me get 7A. 7B.
Sorry, I
So
wasn't.
Rich, do you need a vote on each article?
I think you can just make a motion for each of them, unless somebody wants to vote differently, then you,
I mean, a motion for all of them?
yeah, if it's going to be an agreement, then I would just do all of them. If there's going to be discussion or debate on one, then don't do it that way, obviously.
And can we ask for changes or questions even if we've already voted on it? On 7B?
Well, why don't we do them separate then?
I mean, I really just had just like a comment on Eastham Elementary School.
Okay.
C, how they're asking for
150.
150,000.
Yeah.
I just thought the description was vague. It says the project will install rubber safety surface beneath existing playground structures and purchase and install new playground components to replace aging.
Mhm.
I don't know if we need more, but I didn't know if people thought we needed more specifics of what was being replaced or added, you know.
Well, the main cost of this is what's called PIP.
It's the rubber matting.
The rubber matting, and it's extremely expensive, but it's very helpful, and I think it's something we should always do because of ADA requirements and other, compared to wood chips, which need to be replaced every 10 minutes.
Because I watched that CPA meeting, I was just wondering, I guess that is enough if the bulk of it is going to that
Mhm.
rubber
I can
safety surfacing, because it's a lot of money. I know
always
people
improve.
only asked about the kiosk last year, but I just didn't know.
I can always improve the summaries.
Yeah, I thought
but the CPC committee has vetted each of these projects and they're unanimously recommended, so.
And I support it, but I just didn't know if you thought people would expect a little more detail, but it doesn't sound like they do. But as long as you have the answer on the rubber matting, the cost of that
Well, I don't think people probably understand that the cost is so
is so
Exorbitant.
large for that.
it's exorbitant. Yeah.
Maybe add that to the summary.
Mhm.
Just,
Yeah, if you vote something, I can always change the summary, that doesn't
okay,
change.
all right. Just wanted to make sure.
Thanks, Patty.
Need a motion.
So, let's do the 7A and, can we do 7A and 7B together?
Sure.
Or-
He wants to do all of them together.
oh. Are you getting hungry or?
I just think if there's no debate on these, then just do them all.
It's just that they're quite different. I mean, 7A and 7B to go together and 2A does not.
Okay,
Let's do them separate.
So let's do 7A and 7B.
somebody can make a motion.
Do I have a motion to approve Article 7A,
Recommend.
appropriation and reservations of Community Preservation Act fiscal year 2027 estimated revenues? And-
I'll move it, Mary.
Okay. No, but I want to add to that,
Oh.
Article 7B, the Community Preservation Act recommended projects. So I'm looking for a motion to approve Article 7A and 7B as printed in the warrant. Do I have a motion
Motion to approve 7A and 7B
Right,
as
right.
printed.
as printed in the
In the
warrant? Yeah, yeah.
I'll second that. It's Kate.
It's Kate. I need a first, though. Did
Didn't I
somebody?
do that?
Patty.
Yeah,
Patty just
Patty?
did
Oh,
that.
Okay, okay.
I forgot. I
Pat,
thought I
yeah,
did.
no, that's Patty and Kate.
We've even got the zoning.
Any further discussion on 7A and 7B? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Paul, Roy, and Kate. Yep, that's 9-0, right? 9-0, okay. Let me put this back. And now we're down to. What was the number of that other one? That was 2B?
3A and 3B, the capital plan
Oh,
and the capital
3A.
budget.
Why am I thinking it was, 3A and 3B?
Yep. I move we recommend approval of 3A and 3B as printed in the draft warrant.
Second.
That's Peter and that's Patty. Any further discussion on Articles 3A and 3B as printed in the warrant? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Roy, 7, Paul, 8, Kate, 9.
And then Article 1.
Article 1.
I'll make a motion for the approval of Article 1.
Article 1.
And I'll second that.
That's Roy
And
and
Kate.
Pat and Kate,
Yep.
and that's Article 1
Mm-hmm.
as printed in the warrant.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion on Article 1 as printed in the warrant? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Roy, Paul, and Kate, 9-0.
And I guess my final comment before I move off the warrant would be, obviously 2A through D or whatever we are now, will be part of the budget hearing, as will Article 4, for other budget items. So, I will probably by the end of next week have a final budget book with all changes that'll replace the draft budget book that you've been carrying. And I'll have that posted to the website. If you want a printed copy, I'll get you a printed copy. But if you have any thoughts or concerns about any of those things in 2A or Article 2 or 4 items, let me know. And so I can address them and incorporate any comments into the budget hearing.
Can I ask you a question about 4D?
Sure.
If you go to the write-up. I just figured while you're talking about, it says the Water Resource Enterprise Fund will be effective July 1st, 2025. Should that be 2026? If
Yes.
you go to Article 4D.
Yep, I already picked up that
Oh, okay.
change.
Couple other small
This
things.
is right here, the 2026, this is here.
Yeah, it should be
Yeah,
2026.
yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, what, Peter?
I have a couple other questions on the warrant before we get Get onto the zoning, small ones. Rich, the first page or whatever it is, about the elections. I'm confused about the select board, for instance, 1 3-year term is up, but vote for 2. Is that? And there's several that do that.
Yeah, I haven't sat with the town clerk on this page yet, so I'll verify all those.
And then my other question was on the fertilizer article.
Yes.
So there's some grammatical problems with some of the language, and then there's typos. But is it exactly as it was? Because you've got to present it exactly as presented.
I did, and that's probably why it's there. And I was thinking about this. If it was a petition, I wouldn't be changing it. But technically, it's a select board article,
Oh.
so we can clean that up. But I'll just have to talk to Laura Kelly, make sure she's. I mean, I guess I don't have to, but it's a select board
Want
article.
to talk about them now, or?
No, you can send it. I'll see them. I know what most of them are, but if you want to send me something, I'm happy to look at it.
Maybe we have time for Paul, who's sitting there patiently along with Mary.
I understand we've got a lot, we have a long way to go to beat the select board record of 4.5 hours. Is that what I heard? Hopefully we can do better.
Okay, so the zoning law, bylaws, excuse me. That's 8A through, 8A through 8G.
Maybe I'll give you a. Sorry, I missed it.
That's fine. They're in the same order.
Yeah.
You can use this one. I got the old one. How would you like me to proceed? I can go through and just summarize, or do you just want to go through questions you might have? What would you prefer?
What are people's thoughts? I'm not sure that everybody's had a chance to read everything. I'm just taking a stab at that. And it's quite lengthy, so I'm thinking that maybe unless everybody has a problem with it, I'd like to start at the beginning and just go through each one and then have people ask questions as we discuss each item.
Okay.
Each
Okay.
one of them.
I'll try to be as succinct as possible. I will start. Mary Nee is the chair of the zoning task force. And these articles come through the task force as advisory to the select board. And this reflects the vetting process that the task force went through out of a longer list of items. So these were prioritized for various reasons. And do you want to say any other introductory?
It's on? Yeah, okay. We went before the select board last September. Oh, there we go. We went before the select board last September. We had initially 10 items or 11 items that we thought we would like to tackle, as well as probably another dozen items that we were flagging, but it was not the right time to address them. At the end of the day, we are coming forth with a series of items, but there were three areas that we were not able to get to or conclude, which had to do with District E and some model bylaws that the Cape Cod Commission recently published. So we're to continue our work on those, but what we were able to complete, you have in front of you. And I would just say as a backdrop, and this is really impacts how we've addressed this over the last 5 years since we've been formed. We look to the town's the zoning code, the intent that is articulated in the zoning code. We look to the strategic plan. We look to any of the other plans that have been developed, whether it's housing production plans or tea time or other plans that have come through. And we really look at the themes and the goals that the town has sort of put out. And then we approach the zoning insofar as how does our zoning, our regulations support these visions? And so we take it from that perspective. So you'll see things, there are some through lines in all of the plans that the town has produced, and the articulation of those plans is there is a desire that the town retain a sort of certain character. We're sort of a semi-rural town with a lot of green space and a lot of foliage, et cetera. So there is themes that come through around sensitivity to environment and open space and the aesthetics of the town. The task force has also recognized that we have, Paul, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 56% of the buildings, the residential buildings in this town, I believe were built before 1970. Are we
Close to that.
really close? So there's a recognition that we have some very older properties, a large percentage of properties, and that they will in fact physically need to be developed. This is both residential as well as commercial. So what we've looked at in terms of both the vision that the town has put forth, as well as some of the realities, the reality of the age of our properties, as well as the difficulties with or the issues that arise because our mainstream street is essentially a highway, and that poses lots of challenges. So in any event, I just wanted to give you the background of this is how we've approached this in terms of looking at those visions as opposed to individuals coming to the table saying, this is what I want. I mean, so we spent a lot of time doing that. And in the report that we wrote, we tried to reference back where those visions, those strategies, how we were trying to respond. So I'm going to leave it at that. We've been doing a lot of public comment, and we have a planning board meeting next week. We will be back in front of the select board. Paul started some conversations at the library, and we will continue those. So there's going to be more public discussion about this over the next couple weeks. But I'll stop there because this is very complicated, and we'll need some time to get through this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So Article 8A is amend the zoning bylaw for administration. This amendment would authorize the appointment of a zoning administrator in order to balance the workload in the community development department related to zoning and regulations. Currently in the bylaw, the building commissioner is appointed as the zoning enforcement officer. So essentially that position has to do all of the zoning enforcement and all of the various other regulatory components. In reality, those duties are shared in my department amongst myself and Jackie O'Rourke, our assistant planner. But officially, all these things have to, go across the desk and under the signature of the building commissioner. So what this proposal is to be able to appoint another current staff member, as a zoning administrator, and then delegate certain duties to that position. And currently in the bylaw, there are a number of items that are appointed to an unnamed designee, and who is essentially me, but it's not named that way, but officially named in the bylaw. So this would kind of clean this up to say there's already things that are delegated to other people other than the building commissioner. Let's formally appoint it to this zoning administrator, so they can, just for clarity and consistency. And then the other thing is, in addition to these list of things in the bylaw, a big part of the day-to-day operation is conducting regulatory reviews. Building permits come in, projects get proposed, they require a review to see, does it need zoning approval, planning approval, historic, so forth. And what we do in our department is we issue zoning determination letters, which is basically the guidepost that we give back to the owner or the developer to say, this is the list of everything you need to do in the order in which you need to do it. And that's one of those things that technically, under the bylaw, even though other folks in my department are doing the work, it still has to go out under the aegis of the building commissioner. So this really just lets some flexibility in to adjust workloads and in the day-to-day work that goes on. I want to kind of reemphasize, this does not require any new staff. We're not proposing any new staff. This would just simply allow, and really, to be frank, it'd be, myself and Jackie O'Rourke would be able to do this work in an official capacity. And it relieves the burden being under one staff position. And as we talked about last time I was here, when we were talking about the budget, the building commissioner, that's a busy job unto itself. He's also undergoing a lot of new, with the short-term rental inspections, 900 plus rentals. So I'm looking to kind of help that position and balance the workload. So that's essentially what this article does.
But it doesn't affect anybody's budget?
No, it's work that's already being done by current staff. But again, it's a cumbersome because the person doing the work can't bring it across the finish line and really officially sign the letters or do the final piece to make it official. So it's kind of
An efficiency thing.
yeah,
More time efficient probably now,
Yeah.
right?
that's the goal.
If this,
Would it
Happens.
be two people? You mentioned you and Jackie. Or would it just be one person would be zoning administrator?
This, you can appoint more than one.
More than one?
Yeah.
And that.
And this is really, it's as needed. So,
so-
down the line, if things change and the building commissioner has the capacity to do it, I mean, there's flexibility, but we need to put the language in the bylaw to give the authority to
Somebody else.
to do it. So
But does that designate signature need to be on, or can other people sign?
no, it would be so that the zoning administrator, whoever that may be, or the building commissioner could
Okay.
do the work officially.
Actually sign it.
Right. And this leaves the enforcement component to the building commissioner, so he can concentrate on that without, again, having a workload of having to do day-to-day building inspections and do the regulatory reviews.
Sounds good.
This structure is allowed by law. There's state law that
Correct.
outlines this.
Take a little bit of the load off the building official.
Any other questions on that one? Okay, Article 8B is to amend the zoning bylaw for residential lot intensity. This is probably the most complicated one. There's a few different things going on, but just quick background. In Eastham, we have residential site plan review, and we have since about 2007. Over the course of several years, we've made adjustments to this bylaw to, clarify things, tighten things up. But 2 years ago, and what this does is basically projects over a certain threshold, they trigger the requirement to get planning board review for residential projects. A few years ago, we amended the bylaw to add essentially maximum dwelling sizes in relation to lot size. And this is, to what Mary was alluding to earlier, responding to the strategic plan and the goals of the community and affordable housing issues to try to balance the level of the intensity of residential development and try to make sure that we're maintaining our community character and so forth, and try to calibrate that on the regulatory side. So we had that in place. The planning board and town staff have been working with those regulations, but as is often the case, you kind of get in there, you start working the regulations, you see some things that need adjusting and some shortcomings of it. So we're revisiting this bylaw. The first part is to standardize the terms that we use. We have we call this site coverage, residential lot intensity, and the site coverage limits. We're proposing to change the terminology to floor area ratio, and the formula that we use to calculate these development limits, what we call site coverage, change it to calculating it to net floor area. Essentially, it's not changing the methodology so much as calling it what the standard terms are in other towns. What we call site coverage is really floor area ratio, and it's that part's kind of a cleanup.
Paul, does floor area also consist of basement area?
No, so this is part of the terminology. So there's different terms used. So gross floor area, which is how we used to calculate it, encompasses the whole thing, basements, attics, everything. But when we're talking about floor area ratio and how that gets calculated, we exempt certain portions of the dwelling. So basements don't count, attics,
Farmers
and
porches.
farmers porches and so forth. The reason we do that is because we added these development limits. So we have a cap on how big a dwelling could be in
Could be.
proportion to the lot. But something like a basement isn't adding to the, it's
Yes.
contained, it's not adding to the mass, it's contained within the footprint. So we don't, it's kind of a bonus thing. And it's an offset to say, we're limiting how far you can go out and up, but you get to use that space in the basement. You could finish your basement without getting penalized against your max floor area, that kind of thing. So
But if a porch is 3 seasons, it's out. But if it has heat and it's closed, it's in, right?
correct. So like a screened-in porch, 3-season room would count. It's basically any roofed.
Would count?
It does
Oh.
count. So it's basically any roofed area
For farmers porch.
except for farmers porches. Those are exempt because we see that as a beneficial architectural feature that, contribute. We want to see those. It's a good feature. So we don't penalize the use of that. We want to encourage people to design those types of things. So as I said, the first part of this is just standardizing the technical terms. The second goal of this is to reduce the intensity of the development. Again, as I said, we already have max development limits. Those have been in place for a couple of years. What we've seen in the last 2 years is that the level of development that we see is still kind of disproportioned and not in keeping with the predominant character of a lot of the neighborhoods in town. And we're seeing houses that are, kind of out of scale and out of step with the predominant character. And so we're trying to calibrate the maximum sizes to account for that. And having worked for this for a couple of years, what we've seen is that the planning board has had difficulty, utilizing the bylaw because it forces the board members to kind of have to make some subjective decisions and make some judgment calls about what's the right size for a house in relation to the neighboring house or the neighborhood and so forth. So we're trying to make this less subjective by adjusting the building sizes, the maximum building sizes, so that whatever they may be, we know they'll be at an appropriate size. And then that kind of takes a big piece of the puzzle out of the difficulty out for the planning board. So then the planning board can concentrate on the architecture or the siting of it, the landscaping and so forth. Because what has been happening is we have a limit, and then you have someone come in with their project and they are at or under the limit, but they're still very much larger than the surrounding area because maybe they're the first house on the block that's, redeveloping and refurbishing. And so if that size, again, it's under the max, but it's way beyond everything else, then that kind of sets the benchmark for the rest of the neighborhood. And it gets difficult for the board to kind of make these calls about like what's, we're trying to preserve a certain character of the community and the neighborhoods, but obviously we have to allow for some growth and some renewal. So essentially, this is saying we're trying to get the numbers for the max dwelling size, something where no matter, even if it's at the largest max size, it's still going to be, we would still be comfortable with that. And we can concentrate on other elements of the project. Like I said, siting, massing, location on the site, landscaping, so forth.
Can I just
Sure.
make it stay? So when we did this 2 years ago, the first development limits, one of the things we intentionally did was we were very explicit that the development limits were not considered as of right, like if whatever the limit was for your property, if it was 3,000. But we wrote language that the intent was that would be maximums, but those had to be balanced by neighborhood characteristics and the neighborhood averages, et cetera. So we sort of put back to the planning board that you had two criteria. One is the absolute limit, but also was the neighborhood. the planning board has struggled
With the neighborhood.
with the
part.
neighborhood part. And quite frankly, homeowners bring lawyers in and they say, well, and the lawyers argue and argue and argue and people sort of back off. So we've met with the planning board around this and to have more concrete limits was something that they would desire. I would say that they are also working with Jackie right now on really trying to create tools. They're not abandoning their need to do architectural and sort of neighborhood impact review, but they are now working to try to come up with some tools that allow them to more systematically evaluate that. Right now, it's been too wide open and people are just stuck. So, and I'll go back to Paul, but I mean, one of the things about these new limits we found is, and Jackie has done all the analysis, she's done a credible job, is that if we look over the last year or two in the planning board, 86% of the projects that came before the planning board would be allowed to go forward under these new guide laws. What we're finding is that 14%, and Jackie could maybe clarify this, but the 14% tend to be in some of the smallest lots, those 10,000, 20,000 square feet, when you in fact
Big.
max out the house, you've just got this, and so we've made adjustments in the lower area. We're trying to work with the planning board to get this other criteria, but it's, again, we feel like the 14%, and these, and as Jackie's gone through them, the 14% that would need to be adjusted are in fact the ones that were the most controversial, over the last couple of years. So we're trying
So
to,
this would meet,
we're trying to meet that.
assist the planning board with
This is, yeah.
the
and-
ones that have
yeah.
been the most.
And we actually went in this direction at the request of the planning board. We were struggling with this issue, but they were really clear about that. So,
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is reducing the size of the dwelling, but it's really it's calibrating to what we're seeing as the current development trends anyway. So most of these projects that would have come in wouldn't have had an issue.
So since you implemented the new regs a couple of years ago, I see in the paper a lot of zoning CBA applications against these. What's been the results of those appeals? I mean, are most of them granted or?
the ZBA?
Are you referring to the appeals of the planning board decisions or just the
Well,
regular zoning
when they
board?
talk about site coverage and they're at it or over it, and they deny I assume they deny it, so they go to the ZBA, right?
Yeah, so the projects that go to the planning board, I won't try not to get too in the weeds, but residential site plan review is not a discretionary. So the planning board, basically at the end of it, they have to get to yes, but it's trying to go through the criteria to shape the project. And this is exactly what I tell the planning board. The planning board's role is to shape the project. You have to approve something because it's not a special permit, but they can use conditions and they can negotiate and they can shape the project with the owner developer to get to a place where they've mitigated issues.
Yeah.
Sometimes the planning board they have to approve something, but they may have shaped it and put conditions and requirements that the owner isn't satisfied with, and they may appeal that decision. That would go to the zoning board. Then in that case, the zoning board essentially acts as the planning board and they re-review the case. They have to use the same criteria as the planning board that's in the bylaw, but it's basically a second look, and the zoning board may uphold everything the planning board has done. They may see things differently and adjust it, make some different findings, adjust the project. And that has happened a couple of times. And I think that's one of the reasons we're trying to adjust this, to avoid having that happen.
But if they clearly come in with a plan that's way over the coverage limit, what happens then?
So again, they can't really. So that's why having the max dwelling, like you can't really come in with a proposal that's over the maximum.
But from what I read in the paper, it looks like they do.
There's a limited situation if you're already pre-existing non-conforming, you have a house, then you can apply to go over the max. There's a guardrail, a limit on that to the extent you can do that. But all of these projects, they're all under the maximum, but they're larger than the surrounding areas, like we were saying. So that's where the difficulty in how do you tell somebody that you've designed this under the max, but we're still not going to approve it because it's way bigger. And then that's where the shaping the project comes in and trying to mitigate and shape the project. And it's difficult work. And again,
Well, it's
I don't-
subjective, right? It can be subjective.
it is, yeah. And that's what we're trying. And Jackie O'Rourke is trying to work on a rubric that the board can use to more consistently rate and review these projects. So there's a methodology to it and so forth. So we're trying to work through it, but there is some level of subjectivity that you can't escape because it's, but we're trying to improve it as best we can. So
All right, thanks, Paul.
the last part on this is we are reducing the thresholds for that would trigger planning board review on certain projects. Right now, there's kind of two tiers depending on your lot size. For smaller lots that are under 20,000, there's basically if you're doing a project and you're expanding your size of your house by 2.5% of your lot area, you trigger site plan review. And so basically that's like pretty much any project. And those end up being small, relatively modest, innocuous projects. So we're proposing to remove that. And basically the new requirement would be anything that's over 3,000 square feet. If your net floor area, your maximum is over 3,000 square feet, you would come in for a site plan review because those are the larger projects that would have a bigger impact on the neighborhood and would probably warrant some scrutiny. The smaller projects, again, they're modest additions, and most of them, 99% of them, you're designing a project to fit in with your existing house. You're going to be having the same roof lines, the same materials. You want it to match in. So when those projects come to the planning board, there's honestly not a lot to do with them. They're
Clutter.
yeah. And so you kind of putting the applicant through some time, money, and expense to go through this project where there's really not a lot of meat on the bone to discuss, and almost all they all eventually get approved anyway. So we're trying to just simplify the project and the process and make sure we're just getting the ones that really do warrant attention. The exception to that would be if the project is pre-existing non-conforming, it's an older house, it's close to the setback, they would have to go to the zoning board anyways. So and those might be ones where, there might be some issues that might affect the neighbors. So we're already kind of capturing those projects through the zoning board, and the zoning board has basically the same criteria that the planning board does. So they could address some of those issues that might, come up on a smaller project in an older neighborhood where it's more tight knit and you want to have some eyes on that.
So Paul, I have a question. How does all of this affect somebody who wants to put an ADU on their piece of property?
The ADU itself is allowed by right,
Mhm.
but it's still subject to the maximum floor area ratio. So you'd have to factor in.
So that would have to be factored in with the rest of the house.
Correct.
As it is now.
Okay,
As it is now. Yep.
So if somebody comes in with a plan with a house that meets the maximum, they could put an ADU on their land,
That,
right?
Yeah.
yeah, that's a
Yeah,
possibility.
okay. Thank you.
How do you take into account conforming to neighborhood size residences?
Steve, I'm gonna ask you to use your,
Get a little closer, right?
yeah.
How
Is
do
it
you-
on?
I understand you want to make this more black and white, take a little guesswork out of the process. How do you look at the neighborhood? And that's really not addressed in this, right? That's still judgmental.
Well, we have defined the neighborhood as a 300-foot radius.
Okay.
And with a couple of exceptions that the board can use at their discretion, depending on if there's directly across a pond or something that would be obviously a visual impact or something like that, they can use some discretion to adjust what the neighborhood is. But basically we say it's the 300 square foot radius
300.
around the surrounding area.
300 lineal feet. Not square feet.
Circumference,
Sorry, yeah,
Circumference.
300 from the property lines?
property line all around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
capturing across behind and.
that's the regulatory standard for the abutter notifications. So that would be considered a party in interest to the project. So that's where that 300-foot came from. So that's what we use essentially as the neighborhood.
Gosh, did we lose Kate? Okay,
Okay.
sorry, I'm just talking about.
The next one is Article 8C. This deals with prohibited uses under the zoning bylaw. There's three pieces to this. The first one deals with storage containers. And we're referring to, the metal shipping containers. These, there's kind of been a secondary market that's happened where these have become available widely and, relatively inexpensively. And so we've seen that a lot of folks are using them for storage, essentially sheds or other storage on residential properties. This would prohibit the use of them on residential properties, with the exception of if you're operating a trade service, a home occupation or trade service out of your house in a residential district, there's capacity to have one of these trailers if you need it for storage of equipment and so forth.
What if you make it an ADU?
Well, then it becomes a dwelling. That's a whole different.
These tiny homes.
Yeah, so that this would prohibit them for use as storage.
The town will be required to address both the ADU and the tiny house zoning next year. And the reason I say that is that we didn't get to it this year, but we have to be in compliance with the Seasonal Communities Act. And we've got some language, well, we don't have a tiny home bylaw, and we have some language in our current ADU bylaw that's inconsistent. So we have to, if we do only two things next year, we have to do those two things and get it to town meeting. So some of the issues you're raising about ADUs and in tiny houses, we'll have to study next year.
So today you can't do it at tiny house?
We don't have a category, correct?
We allowed them in certain areas in the ECSD, the Northeast Dam Commercial District, but we still need to look at the rest of the town, how we want to address that.
Nice.
So, there's three parts to this prohibited use. So the first one, the storage containers. The amendment would also prohibit formula businesses and drive-through facilities in District E, which is the commercial district right in and around Town Hall here. Those two uses or drive-through facilities are already prohibited in the only other area, commercial area, Northeast Dam Commercial District. So this would be for consistency in this part of town. Formula businesses, essentially chain stores, they're prohibited in certain sections of the East Dam Corridor district. That district's divided into 6 sub-districts, so they're prohibited in some of them already, and they're allowed by special permit in 2 of the sub-districts. So this would prohibit them in this area, District E, again for consistency with the rest of the town. And the third piece would be to prohibit the use of this deals with fences, to prohibit the use of non-natural fence materials
Solid panel.
on solid panel fencing. I'll go through this again. There's a lot. So this would prohibit the use of non-natural fencing materials for solid panel fencing only along street facing property lines. I'm happy to go back through that.
Along street facing,
The front of your house.
just the front of your home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if you're on the corner,
Corner.
it could be the corner.
It
right?
could be
That's-
both
both
sides.
sides.
Both sides, yeah. So the little bit of the background of this is we, as a task force, early last fall, we started, I became aware of it, and then other task force members sort of similarly did. If you go to areas in the mid and lower Cape towards Chatham, Harwich, all through Yarmouth, there are whole roads that can go for like a quarter of a mile, sometimes a half a mile, which is white vinyl fencing to the property line so that you're literally, it's like driving through walls. And so we became aware of that. And then it's one of those things, I'd be interested in talking to you all in about 3 weeks, because once it's in your head, you see it, start seeing it everywhere. It's really one of those, I didn't notice it. And then suddenly this comes down to the character of Eastham. When we think we are largely an unfenced community, but also our street facing properties, it's very green, it's very natural. And so we we said we would not want to be a town where, you can go down Herringbrook and, it's walls of white vinyl fencing, but it's also people's property. And so how do you balance that? So what we tried to come up with here, and then we had some feedback and made some additional adjustments, is to say, first of all, backyards and side yards, we've made no changes. You're allowed to have upwards of a 6-foot fence before you have to go to the planning board, because over 6 feet is considered a structure. So you can go up to 6 feet, you can have any material you want, and we've changed none of that. So that all remains the same. We looked at the front, the front facing part, which is where, the roadway would be, and said, okay, if we try to mandate no fencing, that probably is not going to receive the support, because there may be lots of legitimate reasons why someone might want fencing. But what we've proposed in a couple sections here is that if you having a fence, there's some setback requirements. If you want a 4-foot fence, you're set back 4 feet from the property line. 5-foot fence, 5 feet. A 6-foot fence, 6 feet. So if you want to go to that taller fence, you would be
Back 6 feet.
6 feet off the property line. So that would, and we debated whether there should be landscaping or not, and we didn't want to impose any additional regulations there. So we said, no, that we're silent to that. People may landscape, people may just leave it natural, whatever, but it would be back. And then the issue came up with vinyl. Again, this white vinyl. We're trying to avoid prescribing materials. And I think when we went back to a meeting with we did a feedback session with some of the select board, the planning board, the ZBA. We heard some consistency about, let's not try to really nitpick on the specific material. So if someone wanted vinyl, but it was a picket fence, would we care, et cetera. But people felt strongly that the solid panel, that sort of wall of white vinyl, was the kind of thing that was not compatible with the aesthetic we're trying to achieve in the town. So it's a setback and it's a material. And this is one of those ones that, you can get people on one end of the spectrum environmentally want none of this stuff, and people who, I want to be able to do what I do. I would say it's we only have about a dozen or so of these kind of fencing. If you drive around town, you can see it in a few places. And we're saying it's not happening here, but it's prolific in other places. And is this the moment we get ahead of the game, before it becomes a problem? We are not requiring anyone who has a current
I was just
fence
looking at the
to take it down. We are saying it's not a right you have permanently. You can have that fence for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. At the point you replace that fence,
I was going to ask you.
if you replace that fence, we would like you to comply with, under this, you would have to comply with the current zoning. But so we're trying to avoid it's going to cost someone something right now. You could do chain link fence, you could do various wood fences. It's not like you have to have a cedar fence. The cost of vinyl is exorbitant, quite frankly. So I'm not sure we're putting a burden on people. But this is, again, this is going to fall into an aesthetic. We have a look and a feel of Eastham, and are we trying to preserve that in some measure? This was a way of trying to sort of balance the issue of the look and feel with sort of property rights and not trying to encroach too much. So that's sort of the middle ground we came to, and we debated this for a very long time.
So I see that you're saying that anything that's in existence as of March 2026, it does not need to be replaced.
Yep.
But I have a question. Let's say with this storm and you have a fence that doesn't meet this at the moment, and you've got heavy trees around the fence and they land on the fence and the fence needs to be replaced because of the trees falling on it and breaking it. Does that require them to replace it with?
I don't think we,
Well, we wrote this before the blizzard.
before the blizzard. You wrote this before the
There
blizzard.
is one fence that is torn apart from the
Right.
blizzard.
So-
Not by a tree, it just blew, there was
I-
wind damage to one.
I think that
section.
that's probably a repair, and I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah,
we'd get
yeah,
into
yeah.
repairs.
And there's
Yeah.
chain link fence with the plastic through the chain. Where does that fall in?
We,
Half of it's no.
we didn't get
Figure
down
that.
too far. No, I mean, solid panel vinyl was sort of the one we
Pretty
felt
cool.
was the most egregious, and then we didn't want to get into too much more,
Okay, thanks.
but
What about if someone puts the fence in on April 1st before this was voted on?
well, that with zoning, once you publish a warrant,
Then they have to.
then you have to comply with that. You can't sort of try to get in. I mean, this applies to all the zoning regs. Anything, if something's in a warrant, you can't try to, get in before the
Beat
deadline.
the system.
Beat the system, yeah.
Do you need a permit for a fence?
Above 6 feet,
Above 6 feet.
then it's a structure.
Are the setbacks just for the solid fencing? Like if I have a split rail fence, does it have to be back 4 feet?
Um,
No, this,
I think that's probably what you intended, right?
just the solid panel fence.
Solid.
just a solid
You know,
panel.
all fencing is, yeah, it's all,
All fencing has to be?
yeah. But a picket fence
Has to be set back.
has to be set back whatever the height of
Height of
the,
it. Okay.
yeah. But
So
if
that would
those
be
are,
just
On the
those
street
are
side.
three,
Just on the street side,
yeah.
just on the
But I mean, a
street. side.
picket fence, generally it's whatever, three,
Yeah,
maybe
3
4
feet
feet.
tall.
It would
Yeah.
only have to be
Get
3
above
feet
this-
back.
Yeah,
You could put a vinyl fence on either of the other three sides,
Right.
assuming they're not facing the street.
Right.
yeah, the other three sides and into your house. I mean, you can have an enclosure, a secure enclosure
The dogs.
for the dogs.
Dogs.
So,
Jumping around a little on the storage trailers. So they'd be allowable for, what do we call it, home-based business or whatever, trade. Are trades allowed in all residential districts?
um,
In the residential district, they are.
A home-based business. And so they,
Well, you can have a home occupation.
home
There,
occupation.
there's guardrails around it, but home occupations are allowed, and then service trades are also allowed in the residential district.
And for both of those, you're allowed to have a storage trailer in your yard if.
No, it's not. So this was one of the issues why this came up is we don't have any regulation around these containers.
Right.
And so people who just acquire them and put them on their property,
Right.
that's just that's been happening.
Shed.
Right,
Right.
but really technically, we would consider them a structure. And there have been very few cases where someone has actually like come in to say, can I put one of these on my property? And we've treated them essentially as sheds to say, it's a structure, it's an accessory structure. Yes, you could have it as a shed, but it has to meet the setbacks just like any other building would. But it's a little gray as to people are using them as sheds and storage units, but
Right.
are they, what are they? So we're trying to clarify the nature of these things, but then also to get to the aesthetic and the community character component of this. Is this something that we want to allow throughout town? Do we want to regulate these or not? So this is an attempt to address them.
Yeah,
Address that.
I'm just trying to understand the proposed regulation. So they would not be allowed unless you had a home-based
Correct.
business or trade. Either, if I have one or the other, I can have it storage unit,
Well, it's really the store, it's just this trade.
trade?
A trade space, the way I look at it is you're operating, you know, I'm a landscaper, I'm a whatever
Plumber
commercial
and
plumber,
pipes in there.
and I operate out of my house.
Yeah.
I don't have any place up on Holmes Road or anywhere else. So I'm storing all my gear and my equipment and so forth at my house as a home occupation.
Well, what about these temporary ones where, like an iPod? Is it called iPod?
Yeah.
Pods.
Odds, yeah.
Pods.
Yeah,
So there's,
They're allowed.
yeah, so short-term ones are
You're
exempt.
doing construction in your home or you're moving in and you have to have something there for a day or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That would be allowed. I mean, as you leave here tonight, you can look over at the property just opposite the windmill. There's 3 storage containers there.
Yeah.
They are permitted as sheds. Since there's no building on that, they aren't exceeding site coverage limits, but we have 3 containers and a piece of equipment there overlooking our town green. So I mean, you know, and again, this is an emerging issue.
Yeah.
Because of the globalization, these are storage containers that have been deemed unseaworthy. And then that's where the secondary market comes in. All of this global commerce that's gone on, when they get to the point that they're no longer physically able to be certified to be a shipping container, there's a secondary market that's now selling them. So so there's issues, but they're cheap. You know, they're cheap, so
They're
people grab them.
Cheap and they're ugly.
They're cheap and they're ugly. Yeah.
Did you consider just not allowing them anywhere instead of, because there's a lot of tradespeople in Eastham. We're gonna have these things.
Well, there's a lot of sensitivity in the town that we have a very limited industrial,
Area.
area. And we have a lot of tradespeople and I think this is where, the history of the town, whether it's fishermen and with lobster traps or,
I'd rather see a pile of lobster traps than
I know.
a storage unit next to my house.
Well, under this situation, they would need to be permitted and we have fencing that would be
Setbacks.
and screening. So, and they exist.
It really requires some fencing, is that
It
it?
requires some fencing, which has been debated as to
But
whether that's too much,
Bad.
too much. But again, this is one of those, it's really an aesthetic kind of thing, and it's sort of like, do we get ahead of this now? It's happening in a couple dozen spots in the town,
Yeah.
but it's, because it's so inexpensive, it could, expand tremendously.
so this would prohibit them in the residential district, and then there's other districts that we all think of as residential, but they're like the Seashore District, the Water Resource Protection District, the Wellhead Protection District. There are residential elements in there, so this would prohibit them for any use in all those districts. The trades use exception is only in the residential district because that's technically the only district that you're technically supposed to be able to
Right.
do a trade service out of your home.
So I have a question. There is a house on Brackett Road that I go by all the time, and it is it's obviously a business now. It used to be just a regular house, regular ranch. And they've got enough lobster traps all over that yard to completely almost cover the entire yard, along with equipment all over everywhere. They've chopped down all the trees. It's practically a bare space around the house, and it's just covered with lobster traps or equipment. It's in a residential area. I can't believe that anybody living next, I mean, I have no problem with people having lobster traps and they're in the lobster, I mean, they're fishermen. But the house, the whole area around the house looks like it was bombed and everything was cut back and trees taken down and it's a,
Well, there's a lot of regulations that come into play on that
yeah.
because we have a perimeter vegetation bylaw that was adopted a few years ago to prevent clear cutting a lot, or at least preserving some perimeter vegetation.
Yeah, it's
And assuming that location, the person is operating
A business.
a business, a trade, technically they should have that equipment behind some sort of fence.
Oh, there's no,
So
no, yeah. No.
Well, there's a bigger issue. I've raised this before, just our capacity to do zoning, proactive zoning enforcement
Mm.
is a substantial issue, and I understand the budgetary situation this year. I do think ultimately we're going to need some additional capacity. Getting the administrator in was sort of a first step
Mhm, mhm.
to get some capacity this year, but I will make a speech next year that we absolutely need this because we're leaving ourselves in a situation that, for example, just because of the capacity issues, Paul and his staff do respond to complaints, but we virtually need people to complain and file a
Mhm.
complaint, and it's putting zoning enforcement in a very untenable situation where you have to complain about your neighbors. I mean, I just
Oh, I
don't
know,
think it's
no, yeah.
a good situation. So that's to the finance committee, that's a long-term thing that I think we really need to address.
Well, now it falls to the building commissioner, right? Isn't he?
And
And he's got enough work.
he
to do.
doesn't he doesn't have the capacity to proactively drive
Mon-
around,
Monitor.
monitor.
And the proliferation
Yeah.
of these pop-up signs all over the place, that just, who's gonna do anything about it, you know?
Yeah.
All right.
next article, 8D, is proposed amendments to the sign code.
Speaking of which,
So this would limit the duration of time you could display short-term rental signs on residential property. This brings it more in line with, our bylaw, our sign code already addresses, there's limitations on how long a standard real estate sign can be out on a property before, after the sale is completed and so forth. And there's limits on, how long you can have an open house sign and things. We've just, as there's more short-term rentals, these signs have been basically permanently installed on residential properties, so this would limit that. It would also prohibit billboards or off-premise signs. This is really kind of a belts and suspenders thing. I think the sign code already has some protection there, but this is just to be more explicit about that in case somebody gets creative about what the definition of a billboard is. This would give us some better protection. It would prohibit the use of commercial feather flags or banners and signs. These feather flags that are temporary, they have become more prolific around town. We don't have a way to, they're really not spoken of in the bylaw, and just the last few years, businesses are using them. They just kind of appear. They're not permitted. The few businesses that have come in for a permit, it's kind of revealed that we don't have a category for these. They're not permanent signs, but they're also not temporary because they tend to be up all summer. So they're not for an event, a one-time event or a weekend event. And so as we started to look at this, we tried to craft a way to allow them in limited capacity, but the feedback we got from our joint session with planning, zoning, and select board was that we should just prohibit them.
What's a feather flag?
Like they're like on the poles, just in the
They-
ground, like a monopole, and they're kind of,
With a pennant on it or something?
yeah, the pennant flag or
Okay.
Oh, you have
We
some
have a
pictures
picture.
for us?
I think in the task force report, we had a picture of container.
And then
yeah,
the inflatables are the,
Yeah, the ones that go for.
yeah, and
So
then
those are the feathers, feathers, the mechanical arms,
oh,
and the billboards.
yeah, I've seen those.
These are,
So they would be prohibited
Mm.
in the town of Eastham?
so
tacky.
there's two things about these. They were not specifically addressed, and so they're proliferating and they're coming in, and what do we do with them? They are, some owners are putting multiple signs on their property. There's sort of two issues. One is an aesthetic issue. There's always been a sensitivity, again, going back to about Route 6 and how our commercial development progresses, and really of keeping more of a Cape Cod village feel. I'm not probably articulating this correctly, versus whether it's formula businesses, drive-throughs, I call it the sort of the Route 28
Yeah.
commercial strip. How do we protect ourselves from that? And this is a little thing, but it's part of that. The other thing that we looked at with this, as well as the mechanical arms that go off, is the fact that we are on a highway and people are going, they should be going
Safety.
safety. There's a safety thing. We don't have rotating digital signs because we don't want people distracted. But
When they're driving.
we've got all kinds of things fluttering. And so there was kind of a safety and an aesthetic thing. And I just think that the existing sign code has not changed. You can have a sign on your building. You can have a sandwich board with, whatever's happening the day. You can have a flag that says it's open. You can have your big sign out at the driveway that, is your permanent fixed sign. All of those signs can continue under this. It's just some of these new iterations, these fluttering things
Things that were really made to get your attention.
they're made to get your attention, which when they're going 40 and often 50 miles an hour down the highway is not necessarily
Yeah.
what we thought would be best. And it's, it's more of the character of trying not to have our commercial strip be that much,
So all of these recommendations in the task force report, we've tied them to how does this align with the strategic goals, and then how does it align with or is not in alignment with the goals in the actual zoning bylaw. And last year we had a lot of work that went into and got approved with the special sign regulations specifically for the Northeast commercial district. So kind of stand apart from the sign code. And these feather flags and inflatables are not in alignment with what we're trying to see, like as the long-term goal of a traditional New England village center with, where the signage complements the architecture and the landscaping and the site layout. So again, it's a consistency thing also. The next one is Article 8. Oh, sorry, one last thing. It's a mechanical adjustment. There's already regulations about window signs. And there is a limit on how much of the window on a commercial business can be taken up with signage. It's already in there, but it's in a kind of a random place in the bylaw. So we want to move the existing language and put it into the sign code so it's more easily found. The next article is 8E, which involves the inclusionary zoning bylaw. The inclusionary zoning bylaw was adopted, I think 2-3 years ago. No, in 2022. Inclusionary zoning is a regulatory tool. It basically ties the development of market rate housing to affordable. And for projects that are creating over a certain amount of development, in our case, more than 5 units, a certain percentage of those units have to be either affordable or workforce. So this has been on the books since 2022. The bylaw wasn't triggered until just this past year. We had 2 smaller scale projects come in. And again, as I mentioned before, you work with these bylaws, you start to see some of the shortcomings and things you didn't catch the first time around. So we're trying to make some adjustments to this. The biggest piece is really this tries to carve out some flexibility for small scale projects, which are for the most part going to be come in not through, professional housing developers, but it's going to be local businesses and owners who are trying to upgrade their business, redo their properties, try to add some apartments, most likely for their own staff and so forth. So our current bylaw is set up to really make sure that any of the inclusionary units get counted on the state's subsidized housing inventory, the SHI list. The SHI list is that's the tally of how many affordable units you have in town. And the state has a goal that they want every community in the state to get to at least 10% of
Sure.
your year-round housing stock affordable. Our bylaw was set up to get units to count on that SHI. What happens is when you create that requirement, it there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through to have it count, and it can get expensive. You have to run a lottery. So when you build the unit and then it's time to rent it up, you have to run a lottery. You have to hire a lottery agent, a housing agency to run a lottery. There's a vetting process. You have to pay for monitoring and so forth. So that can get quite expensive. And from what we've seen, to run a lottery, $25,000 or more just off the top. And that doesn't matter if you're creating one affordable unit or 100 units, because you have to do the same process. So there's a lot, and there's also some restrictions on the size of units. You have to meet certain minimum unit sizes in the state, all of this to count on the SHI. The two projects that came in, we're going to have a lot of trouble meeting those requirements. And so you run the risk of the person proposing the project is going to say, forget it. I'm not dealing with it. They're going to not do the project at all, or they're going to cut down the number of projects to get under the threshold, and then they won't. And so either way, we lose out on potential affordable and workforce units. So we're trying to make a carve out, some exceptions to that. And what this does is it basically creates two categories for projects, small projects where you're only creating 5 to 8 units. You're essentially only required to have one affordable or workforce unit. We're not requiring that those be eligible for the state's SHI. If the developer wants to, that's perfectly fine. But if it's not in their interest to do that, we have this other non-SHI category, and we don't make them adhere to all that, those requirements. We would require a local deed restriction to make sure that they do stay affordable long-term or workforce long-term, but they don't have to meet as rigorous a threshold. So it gives some flexibility. Larger projects that have nine or more, they would still have to adhere to the full SHI. And again, it's just the kind of economy of scale of those are going to be more professional housing developers who understand what they're getting into. They're equipped for that. They expect that. So it's trying to categorize that flexibility for smaller projects. Do you want to say anything else on that part?
Mhm.
It means I covered it adequately. There is, so that's the big thing. Beyond that, there's some kind of technical adjustments we're making. So that first part I just described is flexibility for developers, but we also wanted to make sure that we have a better process for the planning board. This falls under the aegis of the planning board. The bylaw allows some options for developers. They may want to create the unit, build the actual unit. They could opt to have a fee in lieu of creating the unit. So we adjusted the calculation method for that, for how you would calculate what's the equivalent value of, I don't want to build the house, but I'll write a check to the town. We're updating the calculation to make it more accurate and make it more relevant to the housing market. But we're also making that as not a by right option. So that would be an option that the developer would have to come to the planning board and basically get permission for that. And that gives the town, the planning board, a little more discretion to say what's in the best interest of the town. The planning board may say, no, we want you to build that unit, as opposed to cutting us a check for it. So it gives some better control to the town and the planning board in those situations.
Just the only other note is this was the only topic that we actually had a consultant work with us on. Paul was able to write a technical assistance grant to the Cape Cod Commission. So we had an inclusionary zoning specialist that came in. And so in addition to this carve out for the small projects, I think 2 other things she did, which was really helpful. There's, changes in housing law, et cetera. She went through the whole bylaw and has made recommendations for where our language just needed to be updated to be consistent with the law. So that has been done. And the other thing, I think you'll notice there's pages of strikeout, like lots of pages of strikeout. That's really, it's horrible right now to look at this, but our goal is we took model bylaws from other towns when we were originally putting this in place like 4 years ago. And we went through all of those, but we kind of adopted them in whole. And what a lot of those bylaws had, and ours has, is all the state regulations that a developer needs to go through. And we sort of stepped back and said, you know, as long as there's a line here saying you need to comply, you can go see the state's website for all the regulations. We don't need to populate our zoning code with pages and pages of state regulations, which, you know, could change constantly. So this is a cleanup. We've taken all of that stuff out. So you're seeing a lot of strikeouts,
Yeah.
but that's taking that all out so that we're just down to what we absolutely need in this bylaw.
In that large section of strikeouts, some of that is sections that deal with the preservation of affordability. What's the affordability going to be and so forth. We do want to have language locally for that, but it doesn't need to be in the zoning bylaw. So some of it is coming out completely because it refers to state. The rest of it that we do need will be put into planning board guidelines, which planning board guideline, because all of this, the affordability and how you calculate fees and everything, that's all very subject to the housing market. So you want to have that in a document that you can update as needed. So planning board regs can be updated as frequently as we need through a simple public hearing adoption process, not
Not a
having to
town
wait
meeting.
for town meeting. So that just adds flexibility. So again, as things, if the housing market's completely changed, we want to make sure we can,
Be
the bylaw can be
flexible.
flexible with that. So I think that covers all the big pieces of inclusionary. The next one is
Setbacks.
Article 8F setbacks. Part of this is just some housekeeping. The setback language in the current bylaw, it's all narrative. We want to convert that into a table just so it's cleaner and easier to read. The parts that are changing relate to the setbacks for fences, which we just talked about. So for your setback from the property lines for fences is related to the height of the fence on the street. So that gets put into the table. And the other piece relates to campers, mobile homes, and recreational vehicles. We'll have to kind of jump over to this in a second. This will probably make more sense when we talk about the next one, but it basically creates a setback requirement for the storage of those types of recreational vehicles on residential property, and it's a 12-foot setback. We also are putting in the setbacks for fences for street corners so that we make sure that we have clear lines of sight for vehicle and pedestrian safety at corners.
What does it say for campers and mobile homes? Street setback is not non-applicable. NA.
Yeah, so this came out of our discussion with the joint regulatory boards. It kind of came out that if you are parking your camper in the driveway, which is a logical place to park it, but you got to be 12 feet back from the street, then you're kind of creating a burden there. So we did away with that. So I'm going to jump to the last one, but then we can go back to the setbacks if you want, because I think it'll make more sense. Or I should say, I'm going to jump to Article 8H, which is the storage of campers, trailers, and prohibited uses. Currently in the zoning bylaw, storing a camper or a trailer requires a permit from the select board. There's been a very small number of folks who've actually come forth to get that permit, and those that have received it, and there's no real process around it. There's no criteria around it. So it's been kind of an anomaly. And the select board really has never really had a good way to deal with it. And so this was feedback we got a number of years ago from the select board members, like, why is this on our plate? So what this does is it removes the requirement for the permit, and it makes it so that you can store your camper, your trailer, your boat by right, as long as you are meeting the setbacks that are detailed in the table from the previous article. So it's trying to just make it less cumbersome and get rid of a permit that very few folks were adhering to anyways.
So I have a question, Paul. There's a house that is near me that is rented out frequently. And they put a huge trailer right on the front, in the front yard. And it sits there for maybe a month. That wouldn't be allowed.
Well, parking it would be allowed, but if they're using it as,
Yeah, it's,
if they're using it as a residence, then
as part, as
that's not theoretically allowable. So that would have to be reported and, correct?
Yeah, you're not supposed to be living in a camper on a residential
yeah.
property. I mean, again, there's issues that come up where you have some visitors for the weekend and maybe there's, there's an enforcement issue and there's a gray area there. But this is really what this is dealing with is the folks that own one of these vehicles and they're storing it, long-term permanently during the off season. It's on the property as being stored, not driven back and forth daily. Right now, there's actually a permit required for that. This would delete that requirement, but it would make it so you have to have a setback. So you have to be at least 12 feet
12
back off of your property line. So again, these two are, this is related to the setback. So in the setback article, there's some language that, basically for a hardship, if someone has one of these vehicles, they can't meet the setback requirement, they could go to the zoning board and ask for a special permit. And then that would allow the board some discretion to say, okay, you have a hardship here, you got a small lot or something, you can keep it there within the setback, but maybe, if there's a nuisance issue or, a visual issue, they might require that you put a fence up or put some trees up or something to mitigate the situation. But that can be done on a case-by-case basis if needed.
What about somebody who parks their utility trailer with their business name plastered on the side of it right on Route 6? How does that?
No, are you talking, I've seen a landscaping?
Might be.
Yes.
So it doesn't move much. So
Yeah.
looks like I don't know, I'd qualify it as a sign.
Yeah, I would too.
Billboard.
I'm sorry, what, Peter?
A billboard.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's on someone's, are you saying if it were on someone's actual property?
Yeah, it's
If
on,
they're
it's
vehicle?
on
It
the,
is.
on a property. A house,
So it's not in a driveway.
no,
So
it's on the front yard.
Right. So it doesn't meet the setback requirement.
Right.
And then I don't know about the sign aspect of it. So it's kind of,
Mhm. Well, it's situated so that it looks like they're advertising their business. Yeah.
Oh, you want me to answer that?
sure.
If it's, so if it's a trail, I would say, let's start easy. If it's a vehicle,
Utility trail.
it's a utility trailer on a residential property
Yes.
in the residential district.
You've driven
On Route
many
6.
times.
Well, let's assume it's, I don't know, I can't think of
The
where
residential
it's a
property.
residential property. So that would be,
Actually, this says it should, storage trailers used for such purposes shall meet all applicable setbacks and shall be concealed from the view of neighbors and street by a concealing fence.
right, but that's a storage container, not a trailer.
Storage trailer,
So a trailer that's
storage trailer,
Oh, yes.
a vehicle trailer.
storage trailer.
Well, I think
Storage
if
trailer.
there were a complaint in an
Well,
investigation.
so no, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So this came up as during the select board. So I think we need to clean up some of the language because it's confusing.
Yeah.
I think we need to take off the trailer/container. That started because these things that are the shipping containers, some of them are on a trailer, they were on the back of a truck. So what we're really talking about in that case is the containers, the shipping containers, which is different.
Trailer container.
Right, because
Yeah.
we're really, and when we're talking about trailers, we're talking about vehicle trailers, something on wheels. A flatbed trailer or one of these utility trailers.
But in that case, Paul, I mean, you'd have to investigate, but someone who's putting a trailer, but using it as almost as a permanent billboard, and it never moves could be, do you have any authority under these bylaws to address that, or?
Well, again, if it's just somebody's trailer that's parked on their property,
Probably no.
probably say that that would not be an issue. If it's parked on someone else's property, then that could be considered a billboard, which
Yeah.
we're saying should be not allowed. That's an off-premise sign.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to emphasize that there is a great deal of sensitivity, political sensitivity to any infringement on tradespeople
No, I
in the
know.
town.
I've heard that.
So I just think that, we've tried to navigate these things not to be onerous, but to try to meet some middle ground. So I think it's, if people feel, I mean, some of this, are we going far enough is part of the question, but if you feel like this is in a middle ground, I just think it's going to be important to have voices that support this if necessary, because I think that there is a sensitivity, and I would imagine with signs and fences and containers, probably even more than development limits is what we'll debate at town meeting, just because it'll hit some sensitivities. So,
The last one I didn't go through was just 8G, and those are proposed changes to the definition sections. So in order to put into effect all of these other articles we talked about, we do need to add and add some new definitions and adjust wording on others. And those are all spelled out in the article. Yeah, but you have it in here. It's
How, are you going to be having, and I think I did hear, you're going to be having some, meetings prior to the, town meeting?
we,
Discuss, I mean, this is a lot.
Yeah, so I'm having office hours at the library next week on the date on March 16th, 1 to 3. I'll be at the library for anyone who wants to sit down and discuss. I was at the library on the 10th from 4 to 6, so I tried to do one in the evening, one in the afternoon. The official planning board public hearing will be March 18th at 4 p.m.
And will there be, like, you'll dig in deep to these, we'll get more information if we,
Yeah,
That-
we'll
that's a good
have a
idea.
formal presentation slide.
so good idea
Showing
for us to
everything.
watch that.
Yep.
meeting.
and they'll be,
Watch the video.
it'll be open for public testimony.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be.
So that's the thing.
Hear
Nothing's
people's
yeah.
feedback and,
Nothing's set in stone. The reason we want to have these, it's good to have this discussion
Yeah.
and the whole purpose of the hearing is to get feedback. And we may need to make adjustments based on feedback or just, things we missed or overlooked or someone looked at it differently and raised an issue. So
Mhm. So the 318 at 4 o'clock is here at Town Hall?
Yes.
yes.
agenda.
And we've already presented to the Strategic Planning Committee,
Mhm.
which I believe you voted to endorse, correct? Or did you vote?
We didn't vote.
You didn't vote. Oh, you didn't vote. Okay, so we presented strategic planning. We've done a joint workshop with the planning board and the ZBA. We've been in front of the select board a couple of
Has the
times.
zoning board, did they, what reaction did you get from the zoning board?
That joint workshop was really pretty positive. I mean, the one adjustment, again, we went over and over with fences and between, is it overreach, is it appropriate? And the language that came down, which was solid panel vinyl, the solid panel vinyl was sort of coming out of that was the spot they wanted to be at. So that was the one adjustment we made. Did we make other adjustments? I'm trying to think. That was the big one.
On the inclusionary,
And
we
inclusion.
decided that it would be beneficial to have, on the smaller projects, you could have it as a workforce unit, an affordable unit or a workforce unit, depending on what the discretion will be at the developer.
Yeah. So we've done those two. So-
And there's the pre-town meeting,
And there's pre-town meeting. Yes.
which would give people
Yeah.
another chance to ask questions or
And,
comments.
and after and I don't think the date has been determined, but I think after the planning board hearing, we will go back to the select board one final time. They did not opine on this in terms of their
Mhm.
endorsement.
Yeah, I heard the
So that-
conversation
yeah.
the other day.
That will be one more.
So I just want, regardless of what happens at town meeting and so forth, I just want to thank, the zoning task force is a great group. They put a lot of hard work into this. It's a collaborative effort. I also want to thank Jackie O'Rourke because she's been invaluable with doing all this work. I couldn't do it all myself, and she did all the heavy lifting, the hard work on specifically the site coverage
Mhm.
section. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for all the work. Thank you, Jackie, for all your work. And thank you for the presentation and for the discussion and all of that.
Mary, before you move off the town warrant discussion, I just want to double check with everybody. Does anybody have any questions about 4B or 4C? It's the adoption of the WIF and the reduction of the CPA. Did you want to raise any questions now so I can get information out to people, or
What are those for? Sorry, or
the adoption of the
but
wastewater?
what number?
Four B and 4C.
Rich, before we go into a discussion, does this committee need to vote on
Yeah, but
the
not-
zoning?
Yeah, but not tonight.
Not tonight. Okay, that's fine.
Well, I mean, Mary can do it.
No. I just didn't know. I know
Yeah,
you
let's
recommend.
Think in a little bit.
Okay, I know you recommend, but I didn't know if you were going to do that tonight. Okay. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, so that would be, okay.
For
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you,
Yeah.
thank you, Mary. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Jackie.
The 4B was adopting the municipal water infrastructure investment fund, a 1.25% surcharge on your property tax bill, just like CPA surcharge, to generate $600,000 roughly
per year.
per year.
Might want to just add that in the summary,
Okay.
annual
To
revenue.
pay for wastewater debt service. Although it's an increase in property tax surcharge, for C, the next one, reduces the CPA surcharge 1.25% to from 3 to 1.75. So it's basically reprioritizing surcharge, the 3% total surcharge you have now and splitting it between CPA and the WIF. Just want to get it on the table because, I think people by and large have been receptive on it, except obviously it impacts the housing trust folks and the open space folks, because that theoretically gives less money to CPA fund that they can then pass through to them.
Are there any questions on either 4B or 4C at the moment?
We're not voting on them, right?
No.
Mary,
Kate?
real quick, I'm looking at Article 4C. And it looks like the Community Preservation Committee recommendation 6-2. It was not unanimous, which is fine. I'm just wondering what the pushback might have been.
I can tell you that as chair of the Community Preservation Committee, the two people that voted against it were concerned about losing the matching funds as a result of this decision.
And so one of the updates in the description of that article, to Kate's question, under 4C, under summary and explanation, I added a paragraph at the end. Opposition regarding this reduction largely revolves around the resultant less revenue collected by the CPA surcharge, which could potentially be used for both housing and open space purposes. In addition, there would be a reduction in the amount of the annual state matching funds of about $140,000. So we do forego about $140,000 of state match.
But the trade-off is we get funding for our wastewater infrastructure investment fund.
Right. The point here was to try to find alternate ways to fund the wastewater debt service without increasing the general property tax, and this was one way. I can say though, things change, but this year you don't have a lot of CPA projects, and I looked at the prior 5 years, the reduced amount of CPA funding would have supplemented the projects that were approved in the prior 5 years. So, the idea here was just to reprioritize our monies and how we utilize them.
Thank you.
I just want to have that quick. I just want to throw that out there because I didn't want to. You are going to be asked to vote on these, and I wanted to get that out. Just get it on top of your mind. As far as the letter, Mary, I haven't connected with Paul yet, but Paul, now that
Yes.
things are kind of solidifying, if I start perhaps with the template that you used last year, Paul, and sent you some items, would that be helpful?
It would be ridiculously helpful. Thank you.
I will probably this weekend get on starting these letters so we can start talking about them.
Okay.
So I as a result of that discussion, I just want to make sure, since the warrant goes to print on April 3rd, and this is the 12th of March. So next week we have I'm hoping we'll have the schools. There's been some delay on that because of the storm, right?
I confirmed, and he said they'd be here.
Okay, so our next meeting will be schools, so.
Well, Mary, I would also, it's the same agenda. I've already posted that.
Yeah, I know, I saw
So,
that, thank you.
It's the same agenda as tonight's
Yeah,
agenda
yeah.
because we can fit all the things in here. So
Yeah.
in addition to the budget update from the school,
Mhm.
we have the town meeting warrant. So maybe if you're prepared to vote 4B through 4E.
Yeah, I have here that we were to vote on the 19th to vote on zoning. And then on the 26th, we'll vote on everything else. If we're lucky.
Well, let's not limit ourselves. We can
Right.
vote on whatever we're ready to vote on next week.
Yeah. And because of the joint meeting with the select board, I have a note here that they may be looking to us for recommendations, so we should probably.
I was thinking of perhaps, things are still in flux and not finalized, so it is a joint meeting. So I was thinking that perhaps 2A through 2D and 4A, which is the other stuff.
Mhm.
Perhaps you could do at that meeting in front of the select board if you're inclined.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then perhaps the select board following your lead might be inclined to vote as well. I'll leave that up to Jerry. But that's why I'm saying
No
maybe
pressure, Jerry.
next week, if we can get the other 4s and maybe the 5s or 6s,
Mhm.
we can knock out everything other, as much as you can, or as much as you feel comfortable with.
Rich's pressure is not that great compared to my colleagues who do not want to have a meeting on March 30th. So we'll be looking hard on the 23rd.
Okay.
Mhm. And we have a meeting on the 26th, which we can do the rest of the
Mhm.
the warrant.
Yeah,
Mhm.
except that the select board would like your vote
Yeah.
if they could.
Well, we'll see what we can fit in, I guess is.
And I guess the one
Right,
vote,
putting the pressure on you now, Mary.
Yeah.
I guess the one vote is 4E on the supplemental funding. I think that's an easy vote. You're not going to make a recommendation because you don't know what it is yet. So you're just going to defer anything to town meeting on that one, I would suspect.
Oops. But what started this conversation is about the letter for the warrant, and so Misa, you're going to be sending a prototype to Paul.
Yep.
And I don't think we want to discuss that on the 19th with everything else going on.
Well, it's on the agenda if you want to.
Yeah.
I could at least maybe distribute it if we've got something.
And I'm thinking that maybe on the majority of that should be on the 26th, which would give everybody Paul a chance to spend some time on it. But you're going to be away?
Yeah, and Mary, I won't speak for Rich, but I'll speak for me. I think if we can have it done, a draft that you all can respond to by the 19th, I don't know,
okay.
Rich, if that's going to drive you nuts, then we can do what we've done in the past. Everybody can send me comments after the fact. I can incorporate it, and then we could vote on it on the 26th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But again, Rich, I don't want to make your life harder.
No, well, it's the time of year, so Christmas and budget season.
All right.
Okay, so we'll hope to have a draft at our next meeting, and we'll plan on voting on it on the 26th.
Harry,
Right. And again, I mean, we can talk about it if you want, but what worked out better last time was everybody just sent me their comments, so we didn't have to spend,
Yeah.
an hour editing it in real time.
Yep. And I want to just remind people that when they do send comments to you, please only send them to Paul, don't send them to everybody.
No reply all. That's
No
open
reply
meeting,
all.
open meeting.
No reply
Right.
all. Right.
That's right.
Mary,
Oh.
could we just go through the articles we approved this evening?
Oh.
It's Article 1,
Yeah.
Article 3A, Article 3B, 7A, and 7B.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the agenda here. New business. I guess the only thing I have, just to remind everybody, and we've mentioned it now, that we do have a joint budget meeting on the 23rd, which is a Monday. That's not our normal workday, here at Town Hall at 5:30. So I just want to remind everybody about that. I don't have any other new business to report unless somebody else has. And old business. I'm looking at let me see, what do I have?
Mary, I can update you on
Yeah.
the Capital Project Committee just
Yeah,
met,
yeah.
and everything's on track at the moment.
Yeah.
Very tight deadlines. So we're trying to work behind the scenes to see what we can do to alleviate that. But if everything holds to the current schedule, we'll be having the bids and specs available next week with a due date of somewhere around the end of April. So on the efficiency regionalization study, Jackie had a meeting this morning. They're narrowing down some potential options to explore. And so that's moving forward. Not too much more to, I think there's a couple things to work out as to which options they want to
I
leave on the
understand there
table.
were about 16 scenarios they were going to be discussing, and they're hoping to get it down to 4 or 5.
Yes.
It's pretty much down to 4.
Oh, were you at the meeting? Or-
Yes.
Oh, thanks, Jerry. Down to 4? And what's the next step now that it's down to 4?
Well, they're gonna go through a little bit further so we can do some more deeper dives on what they're proposing. There are things that people brought up that there are limits to the study. It didn't look at the high school at all. It didn't look at P-Town and Truro. So there are some things that will be discussed within what the report on that, I'm sure. And we'll see. We're waiting for the next feedback. I trying to think. We have I can't remember the date. It's in April, and then I would expect there'll be a report out by the summer from them.
Thank you, Jerry.
And nothing more on the regional agreement at this point, Jerry,
No,
right?
No, nothing. We haven't done
No,
anything.
no. And on the Nauset Regional School budget update, I know we've talked about it, but I did attend the most recent elementary school meeting on Tuesday night. And at the moment, their fiscal year 26, they have a deficit of about 115,000. And for fiscal year 27, the increase at the moment was 9.98%.
And a big amount of that is additional special ed costs.
Yeah.
As far as this year's budget being short 115,000, it's short again because of special education costs that came in. So what I intend to do, at some point I'll get a memo together to the FinCom and Select Board on that item. And I let you know about a vehicle repair at fire. And we're still tallying all the costs related to the storm that might put us over. We're definitely over in snow and ice, but maybe in a couple other spots.
I'm assuming that there's going to be,
So I'll put that memo together so you know what all the items are. And my suggestion would be, and the reason I want to do that is put you on notice because in June, I'll ask you to do internal transfers that we need a select board and a finance committee vote in lieu of bringing it to town meeting to cover shortfalls in this year's budget.
Yeah. I don't have anything under the town manager. I did not receive any updated town manager report as of for the select board meeting last month.
We didn't have one.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. You had the meeting, but you didn't have the town manager report.
We didn't have a report. No.
Right. Is there anything else that we should be aware of, Rich, under town manager and staff?
I don't think so. No, just.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, I think we're down to adjourning. I think that's called number 10. Is there anything else that anybody needs to? Oh, Roy, are you adjourning? You're adjourning before I've even called to adjourn.
And I'm seconding Roy.
And you're the second.
That was fair. That was easy.
I have a Roy and a Kate. And
Yes,
I'm going to make
indeed.
the motion to adjourn. Is everybody in favor of adjourning? Okay. That's 9-0, and I have 5:25, 6:30. I can't read.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye all.
Bye.